The logistics thing, I have a sense that a lot of those fixes are in place. We're just trying to get people's attention on some of it. The solutions have been worked out. Some of these other things where you start talking about being lighter and nimbler and the more in the service area, my sense is that 10 years from now, people are going to be really troubled that an electrical distributor is going to have a major part of their revenue is going to be from services, not just in gross margin. I'm not sure how that's going to play out, but a lot of people get really stuck because we give so much away now, and we cover it with the gross margin.
Well, the other, if you want to look in terms of continuums, and the last one, Tom's already brought up is the logistics and supply chain. But the second one is your offering. And Neal has a business where he's looking on the side of your offering, expanding his offering on the product side, the breadth of product and solutions that he offers. In the electrical business, you're in the power, your transmission fluids, and for the rest of us, we're also saying on the other side of that coin is the service offering. So you have to expand your services, and the services probably move on to solutions. So I think that if you look at the power continuum in the traditional sense we already talked about, if you look at your offering, that continuum, I think you're going to have to expand that also, and all the implications that we've been talking about. And then Tom brought up, there's another element of our business that you could look at, depending on how you view your business, and that's that supply chain, which is, if you think about it, is another continuum for us to decide where we're going to be on that and how much of that we're going to cover.
So I found it interesting looking at Jayne's website, that because they do a lot of integrated supply, and I'm going to brag on you just a bit, but we always talk about margin, and when I went to the Turtle and Hughes website, they were bragging about lower margins, about how they were efficient and can deliver value in terms of integrating to customers, and I'd never seen that before. So
it's a fascinating market, and I think our service offering in the integrated supply world is just another testament to how a distributor needs to look at the whole supply chain and figure out how you can grab more and more pieces of it on the whole continuum. And obviously our customers are looking for cost savings across that entire supply chain. So we really try to pinpoint key strategic points on the supply chain, and integrated supply is one of them.
So, but what's interesting to me is I'm listening to Chris, who's running a huge business, and you're a regional, and you're both echoing a lot of the same things. If those in our audience that are independents or regional distributors, this is big stuff. Where do you start? What do you do? How do you prepare yourself so you can be a part of this future channel?
Well, you have to recognize that things are getting more complex. Customers, it's a given now, customers want more for less. And we're talking about now ease of doing business. We're talking about service offerings. We're talking about customers shedding their risk to us on the supply chain, on all those three continuums we just spoke about. So I think you really have to look at those three different dimensions that have been brought up in different ways here, and decide what role you're going to play in each of those different different dimensions, and then just be the best at it. Again, there's complexity on the supply chain. We go back, again, the Turtle & Hughes is an outstanding company in that regard, and they've decided that here's what we're going to carve out along this whole supply chain. We're going to play along the supply chain. We're going to be very good here, here, and here, and then they're going to expand from there, I would assume, at some point. So you got to decide where you're going to be in all of those and be really good and expand from there. Be very, very good and be of more value to your customers, because nobody's going to pay, as distributors, nobody's going to pay us a premium anymore to simply buy a product and then deliver it. Or the premium will be almost nothing. We're not going to be able to make any money on that. So we're going to have to get ourselves involved in a lot more in each of those three areas, I think.
Well, I think that involves creating a culture of adaptability in your organization. Your sales force, your branch leaders need to become more agile, more adaptable to customer needs, and much more entrepreneurial. And one of the cultural initiatives we have at Turtle is driving innovation through the entire sales force, operations, every.
You don't want me to change, do you?
I actually insist on innovation stories out of all of our locations on a quarterly basis. So they're always scrambling to come up with what new and interesting idea they've come up with in the last 3 months. But it sets an expectation.
But at Kaman, I've got to think that you're following customers. I mean, this move into the electrical thing was pretty much customer driven, wasn't it, Neal?
It was absolutely customer driven. You know, you walk into any plant that you call on today, any OEM that you call on today, and they bring, you know, multiple different technologies to bear. So we felt we needed to be positioned there so that as they inevitably reduce the number of suppliers, that we were positioned to be a survivor there. And also, for us, we've needed to pick some brands that we can really get good at and really understand, really be well trained on, so that, again, when we go into our customers, we can bring knowledge, we can bring value, and help them become more competitive. So, it was two things. It was really to broaden our offering so that we can better meet the customer's product needs, and to Chris's point earlier, is as well to be able to have people that are highly trained in specific areas so that we can bridge those gaps. You talk about being agile, it's finding those gaps and then hopefully filling those gaps, and that's what we're trying to do.
What's coming across to me is if I go back to the sort of entrepreneurial view of growth, I'm going to go find a couple of really good field sales guys that are hungry, and I'm going to send them out on a commission and say, you get to eat whatever you kill. And they sell themselves first and all the rest of it. But what all of you are talking about is, rather than leaving it up to a sales guy to go tag an order for maybe something you don't stock, this is much more about being intentional and picking the piece on that continuum and focusing. I mean, that idea of being shifting from being opportunistic to intentional, I think, is maybe one of the things that'll define who makes it and who doesn't. I mean, as our token manufacturer, Tom, when you're looking at the distribution channel and the role that it plays, I'm sure it's a complex question to really understand who are the right kind of partners to have. I mean, how are manufacturers in general going to look for stuff like that in terms of who's a good distributor or bad distributor in terms of this?
Yeah, great question. First of all, I think picking up that order is still pretty important.
Thank you. That makes me feel much better, and our audience as well.
Obviously, there's a lot going on in the electrical industry, so there's a lot of growth opportunities, and so I think electrical companies that get organized around those growth opportunities, so it's kind of a growth mix idea, are just going to outgrow the rest. Because we did some work on this recently, where we looked and said, actually electricity usage isn't growing that rapidly around the world. It's only a couple %. In some countries, it's going the wrong way. So you can look at that and conclude, boy, this is probably a 2% growth industry. So why is it more like 7? And the reason is that some countries have aging infrastructure, so there's a big catch-up piece. Everybody wants a safety investment to make in arc flash and those kind of things to make it safer. And it just goes on and on. More backup power systems, because losing power is really becoming intolerable, not just in data centers, but in lots of places. And so you look at those growth opportunities. If you're going to grow more than 2% in this industry, you've got to get after some specific themes. And we're looking for channel partners that want to co-invest in going after those things that get you from 2 to 7 or 2 to 8. And it isn't always just one channel partner that can do all that. Sometimes you need reps and sometimes you need other things. But broadly speaking, distributors who can not just show up and say, I've got it, but I know about it, and I know how to position that against a safety initiative or a grid initiative or something like that. Those are the channel partners we're looking for, and takes both of us to accomplish all that. But when we do that right, we get a lot more growth than just sitting around waiting for electricity to be used more.
Yeah, we don't have a single meeting with any of our partners or internally where we don't talk about targeting and segmenting. So we talked about, where we're going to end up, but the winners are going to be where you decide where your market is, what role you're going to play in the supply chain, where you're going to be on that power continuum, what your offering is going to be. And as an example, Tom mentioned around the world, electrical usage, not so much in the U.S., but around the world is going down. So for example, there are a lot of electrical distributors in Europe now are on the product offering. So there are a lot of electrical distributors that are offering HVAC products now in Europe because they have to move their offering out and they move towards the HVAC. In Northern Europe, a little different set of dynamics. So on the supply chain, they're accelerating the web commerce and the e-commerce piece. So their dynamics are different around conservation and energy. And so that's where they decide to go on the supply chain and that technology offering. So you really do have to target and segment and decide where you're going to be. Otherwise, you will never grow. And if you don't grow, you die. So it's critical in your business to decide where you're going to be. It's not okay to wait for the contractor to come back in or wait for the industrial segment to pick back up. You got to decide in the industrial segment, am I going to be oil and gas? And then you got to decide, am I going to be midstream, downstream, or upstream? So it's going to be critical to understand where you're going to take your business.
I think also that the customer relationship is more important than ever, and you have an awful lot of that on a local level, on a regional level, and we really value that because I know that some of our customers are going to the internet to buy and so on, but still at the end of the day, this is an industry driven by trust and customer relationships, and as the front end, we just can't value that high enough. It's really important to us.
I think one of the credos at Turtle is when we're partnering, particularly with a manufacturing partner, is how can we help keep this manufacturer in the United States? And what services, whether they be technical or logistics, can we offer them to lower their costs, to keep them here, and to possibly even attract their other manufacturing locations to consider the U.S. again, and at the same time partnering with our large global manufacturers and understanding that they're operating on a global stage every day, and I think sometimes we forget that.